We are live. Yes, we are.
We're live.
Since no one's watching yet, I'm going to go over here. And hey, everybody. It's P.J. Turner, executive producer and host of the Break It Down show. We're at Phil Green's house today. We're going to be talking to Matthew Marsden in a second. We're starting a little bit early. He's coming in right now. So let me grab him real quick. Looks like we're in the car studio.
I think Phil proper owner.
Yeah,
Studios.
Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. If you want to turn that camera, your phone 90, it'll give you a wider shot if you care about that. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. My apologies. I'm running in between things today, so
you're fine.
I had to get you guys in the phone. But how you doing?
We're great. This is best-selling, award-winning author Scott Husing, commander of Echo Company. He wrote a book called Echo and Ramadi.
What's up, brother?
I know what a fan you are of veterans and whatnot. I too am a veteran,
yes.
So great to have you on. We're going to promote something real quick since we're here. And so we've just done a ride across the nation to raise awareness or continue awareness for veteran suicide. And we also raised some money. And so this is for the audience, as well as you, if you're interested, Matthew. But we're selling tickets for a one-of-a-kind rifle. It's an AR-15 type rifle. It's about a $5,000 on-the-market rifle. So we're selling raffle tickets for $100. And if you guys go to blackstonearms.com, you can go in there into the queue. It's real obvious. You hit that and you buy the raffle ticket. And we're only going to sell a limited amount of these things. So once we sell out
100, and there's actually, I think, only 80 tickets left.
80 tickets left.
Yeah.
So if you want to take a crack at that, you can take a look. And there's videos about the rifle itself. And it was on Chad Prather's show. It's been around a little bit. So we're all promoting that. So definitely go to Blackstone Arms. And I'll put the link in the show notes. And you can always hit me up at PJ Turner or Echo and Ramadi or Save the Brave. We're glad to send you the information for that. So definitely, if you're interested, it's going to go to a good cause, whether you win or not. And if you happen to win, holy shit, this rifle's awesome. It's got your signature on it.
Yeah.
Echo and Ramadi. It's got the Marines that they lost during that fight, and then also the Save the Brave logo on the other side. It's a
5.56 custom stage drill with from Scalpel Arms and Cerakoted desert tan with laser engravings. It's got the FDE Cerakote on it, Delta muzzle brake by Live Oak Accuracy, the Raptor ambidextrous charging handle, and AR-15 performance barrel and bolts. So it's pretty tricked out. It's, again, way sexier than anything I ever carried on active duty or the Army or the Marine Corps issue. So
you get yelled at if you carried that thing.
You're like you're too high speed.
What the fuck is that?
Go grab a shitty rifle like everyone else. We don't want you to kill any more people than we can.
So that's the plug for the rifle. We'll keep doing that for a couple more shows, and then we'll get on to new things. But that's as we wrap up Ride for the Brave. That's the last real big order of business, and you're helping to raise charity, and you know how hard we work at trying to take care of this. So thank you all so much. And hey, Matthew, let's have you start the show by saying, "Hey, this is Matthew Marsden, and you're watching the Break It Down show."
Hey, this is Matthew Marsden, and you are watching the Break It Down show.
So easy, so great. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a real honor to be on your show.
Are you promoting any projects right now?
Well, I am. I was very fortunate a few years ago. I have to just say about the genesis of this. After being in Black Hawk Down and working a lot with veterans, I found that a lot of guys would open up and talk about how crappy Hollywood is. How it doesn't represent veterans correctly. So, after a while of hearing about it, I thought, you know what, no one's going to do anything about this unless I just go out and do it myself. So that's what I did. I went out and I spoke to some veterans that I know, and wrote and directed and produced and starred in a movie called I Am That Man. And, I was just I'm very fortunate that you set out with an objective. You never really know whether you're going to achieve that objective when it comes to movies. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, sorry. You never really know whether you're gonna hit that objective. Like Michael Caine said to me, you never go out to make a bad movie. But for me, it was particular that I wanted to address all those stereotypes that people have about veterans coming home, about the way they deal with trauma, the way they deal with PTSD, and the real things that really affect them. And so, after passing the script around through a couple of my combat veteran friends, I finally got it to a place where I was like, okay, I can do something with this. So I wrote, directed, produced, and starred it because I knew that if it got into the hands of Hollywood, then they'd start messing with it. They'd start saying, well, which actually happened when I got notes off a friend of mine. He's like, can't you have the guy like shoot a bunch of people at the end? I'm like, no. So the movie's I Am That Man, and right now you can only buy it on Amazon as a DVD, but we're just working on getting it out on a streaming platform, and it's like the reason why I chose I Am That Man, not only because the character is a Navy SEAL in it and it's from the Creed, but it's also saying, I am that man. I'm the broken person, but I'm also the veteran. I'm the father. I'm working it out. I'm all these things. And it's okay to be all those things wherever you are in your journey, right? Because that's the main thing. A lot of people like beat themselves up on not being more this or being less that. And I'm like, no, you just got to just understand you are where you are. You got to reach out to your brothers and talk. You know what I
Did you
mean?
get
So
did you get a lot of or any pushback from your contemporaries or those who were executive or directorial producers that said, hey, we need more explosions, we need more guys, getting shot, and
yeah,
you have to compromise because at the end, that's what sells. That's what's going to sell, downloads or ticket sales, and that's kind of an artistic license where you say like, no, I'm not going to compromise my integrity as a writer or an actor. Because when we talk to friends of ours who are veterans in the acting and writing space, I asked them this one question and I got an interesting answer. I said, why did they not get a military consultant? They said they didn't want to pay for it. It's not that important to them because the average viewer,
yeah.
they just digest what's given to them on screen and they're willing to swallow it. And that's a little disheartening to me, but especially when the simple things like the uniforms are askew and they don't get that right. But how did you deal with that when you made I Am That Man?
Well, I mean, obviously, I was blessed with doing one of the greatest war movies of all time. So my standard was very, very high. For example, when we work with the Army Rangers, they hit us if we flag someone with a muzzle, and you don't do it again. It's a real steep learning curve. You go like that, they're like, smack, we don't do that. And I'm like, I never did it again. So to me, always been associated with the U.S. military and especially the 75th Ranger Regiment. For me, it was really important that I got it right, like super important, and especially because, being a part of that movie made me kind of, I'm not in the club, but I'm kind of on the outside, like looking in. And sometimes guys will like open the window and let me talk through the window about it. So I really wanted to do it right, and that's why it's not out of choice that I said I will star in it, I will write it, I will direct it, because that's a lot of hats to wear. And I'm very cognizant of being a jack of all trades with that. But I'm like, who can I trust that knows these guys? Who can I trust that wants to do it correctly? Who's not going to get pissed off if I'm like, hey, hang on a second, like you can't walk like that, or you can't say that way, because that's what they don't do that. So what I did to combat that was we did it independently, completely independently. And the good thing about that is that, as you said, veterans watch it. Like Gary O'Neill, Ranger O'Neill, said that it is the best depiction of a warfighter coming home that he's ever seen. And a bunch of guys have done that. They've called me, and said, I watched it. It was really hard to watch, right? Because there's a lot of secret sauce in there, right? There's a lot of secret sauce where most civilians will watch it and they won't get it, but you guys will go, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? So the way to get around that is to just do it independently and do it completely on your own. But it comes with a price, because you don't have the publicity of a big studio behind you. You don't have the dollar amount that you can get it out and get it to people. So, but at the end of the day, I really truly believe, especially when this goes on streaming, which has been a little bit of a problem, because right now all the people say is who's in it, who's the lead, and if you're not Chris Hemsworth or Chris Pratt or any of the other Chris's, they don't care about it, right? It doesn't matter that it's an authentic movie that people respond to, and by the way, there's a huge audience for it, right? Obviously,
Right.
you don't have that, but people that watch it, it really resonates, which was my mission, so my mission was to do that. But just going back to what you were saying about Hollywood, here's the thing. I mean, Black Hawk Down kind of changed the game, because it was a much more authentic film. Certainly, tactically, the way that we moved and everything, it was kind of like the first modern warfare movie that showed urban warfare, because if you remember, that was we did that in 2000, and that was pre 9/11. So we were kind of ahead of the curve on that. But since then, what happened is a lot of people will watch a movie like that, and we actually had it on the movie where we got a draft of the script. That was another writer came in and did a draft of the script based upon a previous draft, but he didn't know the background of what had happened. He hadn't read the book, he hadn't done his research, so he was just doing kind of like a facsimile of the script. And so what you're seeing now in Hollywood is people writing scripts and TV shows based upon previous TV shows and previous movies, right? So they don't take the time to do the research. And you wouldn't believe it, honestly. You're in the room and you're like I'll give you an example. When they did Tears of the Sun, I got the script of Tears of the Sun, and it called the guys, the enemy in that, skinnies. And I'm like, that was a specific group of people in Somalia, and it was, that's why they got their name. It's not like just generic people in Africa.
Yeah.
It's not that. So you see that a lot there. And here's the weird thing: it's more impressive if you do it right. It looks better if you do it tactically correct, if you have the patches right. I mean, I see it all the time. Honestly, it's very frustrating for me. But the truth is some people care. Like, oddly enough, like Michael Bay really cares. Like, Bay really cares. Someone like Ridley Scott, who wants to get it right, cares. And there are others that they don't. I mean, you see that by the generic depiction of veterans in certain lights, which is frustrating. But that was my mission, to make a movie that combats that.
When Chris Bradley Cooper did playing your Chris theme, when he made American Sniper, he got a lot of things right that you wouldn't know if you weren't a veteran. The travel from combat to home, it's first off, it's you get good at traveling, but basically you're still carrying all of this stuff with you when you arrive.
Yeah.
And you do want to go grab a beer or look out at the ocean or something to mentally reset. I mean, at least that's what I tried to do, because 36 hours earlier, 70 hours earlier, you were going out on patrols in my case, and it's a lot. They did a pretty good job of capturing that. Like, just give me a second to arrive. I'm physically, yes, I'm here. Mentally, it would take me 3, 4, 5 days to fully arrive, and then emotionally was months down the road before I fully got home. And I think they did a good job of getting that right. But those are things that you have to have someone on the inside to explain, because there's no way a writer can write to that. It's just, and then to make it dramatic and important as well, to have that balance between what the wife or the girlfriend or the husband, whoever it is, and how they react to that. It's also a big part of that, because no one's trying to upset you, but you're already kind of upset because everything that was normal for you, which was chaotic, and now you're back in this, it just flips everything. So you have to get into this new normal, basically.
Well, you have a situation where, it really is that movie was a classic example of all things coming together in the right way, in the sense that you've got a major Hollywood star that can call the shots, right? So Bradley wanted to get that made for a long time, and I believe it was with Spielberg for a time, and then he went to Clint. And
Yeah.
Clint's going to get it right. I mean, he's
Right.
going to get it right. So you got a book there that was, written by Chris. Chris was there for a lot of it, I believe. And then you've got a filmmaker that is absolutely focused on getting it right, and did serve as well. So that was a really good mix, and you can see what happens. And then people go, American Sniper took $300 million at the box office. I'm so shocked. And we're all like, well, we're not.
Yeah. In January, by the way, in January, it crushed. That's crazy. Yeah. But it's not crazy.
It was. No, it's not at all. And this is the funny thing. People get all shocked when movies make hundreds of millions of dollars and the rest of America is going. Maybe that's because you need to go outside of your little 3-mile radius in Hollywood. Maybe if you get out somewhere else and see, what Americans really want to see. And by the way, what the rest of the world wants to see as well, because I grew up loving America and wanting my heroes to be American as a Brit. And I think it's really, really important to remember that, is that the world, as much as people want to complain and talk about this country, if wherever you go in the world, they'll be like, America, America. You go, do you want a passport? They'll be like, I'm coming. So it's kind of, I always say it's like the kid on the block that has all the toys, right? You either want to go play with him, or you want to smash up all of his toys, right? It's one or the other. And it's all down to jealousy and being jealous of what this great country has to offer.
Yeah, I think it's perspective that a lot of Americans don't get. And there's some statistic, I'll round up or down, but 90% of all Americans have never traveled outside of the United States. And then within the United States, I think 80% have never even left their own state.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So to get that global perspective is something that you either have to be in the military to get, because they ship you around on their dime, or you have to have the means. And it is expensive to travel. And I think it's easy to, say, John Q. Public doesn't have the perspective. And if they got out more and understood that, well, that all takes money. And I understand that. And I wish there was, I'm sure the percentages are lower in a European nation where you can basically hop on the train and go visit 5 countries in a day. So you do get a little different perspective, but it's still the European culture, much like, Western culture and American culture is so vastly different. But when you're traveling to emerging and developing third world countries, you really get fire hosed. And to bring that into the screen, I think is something I really pick up on. And I like the examples you gave too about Ridley Scott or Bay, Transformers, or Aliens. Even in those futuristic movies in Aliens, I still saw the Marines as Marines. Like, he got that right. Like the lexicon and the way they acted and the swagger was right. The tactics in Transformers was right. And, and they use real guys, because like in Transformers 3 was Remy, who's been on the show. Yep. You can't really recruit a guy like that who can't chime in and say, nah, that's not how it's done. I was a U.S. Navy SEAL. So I like those guys that really, and doing research is not fun. That's not the fun part of the business. Writing and being creative is always fun. I'm sure, doing the takes is fun, but I like it when they do that. So I don't know, just my 2 cents.
Hey, look, I love doing it. Like whenever I could be training, whether I could be becoming a better man and understanding more about the people that I was portraying, I took the opportunity. So when we did Black Hawk Down, we first went to Fort Benning and we did room clearing, and we did Come to Jesus Day. We did all that kind of stuff. I've still got my Ranger t-shirt. I don't have my sexy Ranger shorts though. I don't have those anymore. I grew out of those a long time ago. But when we went to Morocco, we had the opportunity to continue training, and I did. And I would much. I mean, look, it's just the way I am. I come from a very working class, what they call in England, like a council estate. I know it sounds, when I said that before, my friend went, "Wow, a council estate. You come from an estate." I'm like, no, it's kind of like the projects, right? So don't think it's fancy. But so being around veterans is more my speed, right? Like it's more, those are the guys, I didn't grow up with any actors, the majority of them went into the Grenadier Guards or the Royal Marines or whatever. So for me, being around those guys I feel more comfortable, on set. So that was the beginning for me. And when I really realized, why the majority of people join the military, it was a very big turning point in my understanding of why America is so great, and also the understanding of what freedom means to America, and Americans, and that to me was just like it was like this kind of atom bomb going off in my brain, and then you realize why America is this country, and why you look at, like, because as England, funnily enough, as an Englishman, they didn't teach me about the Revolutionary War. I don't know why that
What?
is, but they didn't.
Mm.
Yeah. They kind of, I didn't go over the ones that we won. So once I found out about that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like George Washington was this incredible person, and all these people coming together, for the to create the Constitution and to create the country was just this miracle. And I think that it really is a miracle. I mean, having all those mega brains, and also the courage that they had back then, was really quite something. And so to me, it just led me to have what I believe is a deeper understanding of what it means to be an American, and what this country stands for.
We're guilty of that too,
and
though, to a large degree, about talking about the Civil War,
Mhm.
which was a dark period in our own time. But even in the veteran space, we list all these great battles and victories, and we talk about the death toll on 9/11 and all these great battles and the people, but we don't talk about Antietam. Like, that was
Mhm.
5,000 people we lost in that battle, and
Yeah.
it was Americans killing other Americans, and brothers fighting brothers, and different sides of state lines, and we're guilty of that too. And we've only been
Yeah.
doing this for just over 250 years.
Or we
so-
talk about the drain. We don't talk about what happened two
Yeah.
weeks later when there was no one there to hold that land, and it went
Yeah.
right back to the Vietnamese. But another thing is interesting. Yesterday we had on Scott Dickers. He's the creator of The Onion, and he admittedly is very hard left. He believes in Bernie Sanders and AOC and that kind of thing. And it's curious because he had said, and I don't mean to in any way put down what he says, because I believe in everybody's right to express their opinion, and I don't know that he's wrong. I think these things can be simultaneously true. But he talked about patriotism being a little childish and waving around flags and that kind of thing. But I think it depends on where you're from. And if you come from the projects in England and you're a kid that's like, I don't know what I'm going to be, so I can be anything. I'm going to become a black belt. I'm going to become an actor on a national, like a national treasure of a show that you were in Great Britain. Oh, by the way, I'm going to go sing songs. I'm going to sound like George Michael a little bit, but how do you avoid that? But you come from a different place, and you self-select by coming here, and you're like, I want that. Our friend Johnny Walker, you can't have a greater American than him, because he was an Iraqi interpreter who worked with the SEALs, and he went on more SEAL missions in Iraq than any SEAL did. And every day he's like, I'm living the dream, because I was trying not to get killed in Iraq, and here, I can do anything, I can be anything, and he has true freedom, and so he gets to be a patriot. So these two things in America, they go together,
do not think that patriotism is childish or immature. I love it. I really do. But I think that the difference is you can be the thing about the founding of this country and the principles that this country is based upon are great. Okay, they are great. You read the Constitution, you read the Declaration of Independence, and these are two incredible documents. And if anyone takes the time out to truly try and have an objective point of view, see, I don't know why. All my life I've been a reader. And I've always wanted to know the truth. And I think that if you pursue the truth vigorously, and understand that by the pursuit of truth, you're going to be uncomfortable, and that it's going to you're going to have to make some compromises in your own life. um, I think it's worth it, and I think that that is just something. I don't know why it's always been something for me. So when I first understood about the Revolutionary War, for example, and I saw why it happened, there's a very clear. I mean, I guess you could talk about it being in line with natural law. What you'd say is natural law. So you look and you say, well, hang on a second, this was immoral. What they were doing was wrong, right? And what the colonialists wanted was that what they wanted was right. And I think objectively and truthfully, you say, okay. Now, whether you had the intestinal fortitude to go out and do something about it is something else. And they did. And when they did, then they set up this country that they understood. I mean, it really is incredible. They understood that other things, other challenges would come, right? And they got this document that really, if you applied it, and in my opinion, when you've started moving away from the Constitution is when the problems have happened, right? When the conflicts have happened is when you've moved away from it. Because if you're a little bit more um, diligent and sticking to the Constitution, then eventually things will work their way out. So to me, I look at that and I say, okay, this is an incredible document. Does it mean that the country is not flawed? Of course, of course, every country is flawed. I think we understand that as human beings, we're all flawed in one way or another. But I think the Constitution recognizes that, right, and puts checks and balances in there to stop it. But when you have something like that, where I can come from a foreign country, and a lot of people go, oh, England, but this is a country this country was founded on a war against, and I can come here and people like you will say, I want you on my show. I want you to talk about your experiences. I have never felt like a foreigner here, right? Never. Even though we always play, I make a joke about this. We're always the villains in movies, always, right? We're always the villains. But patriotism for a country that has been the greatest spreader of freedom in the world is a good thing. You're being patriotic, not necessarily for a country, I believe, but it's the idea that country was founded upon. And then in turn it becomes about the country. We all know that we go through ups and downs as a country. People do things that aren't right, and there are decisions that are made, there are mistakes that are made. But I think that we recognize that there is that there's, if you pursue a utopia, somebody's going to be oppressed, right? And the Constitution and this country kind of allows for that back and forth and the reality of human nature. Anyway, sorry for rambling.
And if the Constitution and Declaration of Independence are just too sterile for you, I would submit that you need to have a copy of the Federalist Papers on your desk, because that's kind of like the user's manual or the Cliff's Notes to the Constitution, and it really speaks to why they made some of the decisions, some of the more elaborate prose that didn't make it into those documents. And I think that the Federalist Papers, if you don't have a copy of it, most Americans are hard pressed to have one in their house, but it's essential to really have an understanding. And I think you raised a question for me that I'll ask you, is about patriotism. Do you think it should be a requirement, or it's just a brand for some?
That's a really difficult question to ask, because I believe in freedom of speech. So I believe that you should express yourself in whatever way you should, even though it might be unpalatable. I believe that anyone that has been educated correctly and understands history, there's only really one outcome. It doesn't mean that you blindly follow something. right? It doesn't mean that you're right, just for the country. But I believe that there's an amount of respect that should be that should be given to the flag. And in the other sense, I don't think it should be just something that is just like a flag that you stick on your shoulder and say, "Hey, look, I'm a patriot." Like, you got to understand why and what that means, and the like anything, if you're going to stand up for something, you should understand what that thing is, in its depth, and also be able to look. I guess because I know more about American history than I do British history, right? Because I came here and I'm like, you know what? I'm in this country. It's been gracious enough to welcome me. I need to understand it because I don't want to do anything that would offend anyone here. Americans that have welcomed me. I need to understand the culture because I think a lot of people will go, for example, on the Second Amendment thing, they'll go, oh, well, Great Britain this, Great Britain that. I'm like, look, I think George Bernard Shaw said we're two countries separated by a common language, right? So there's a lot of difference. Like if anyone's ever driven from New York to Los Angeles, you understand the American spirit because those guys came over it in covered wagons, and it's just staggering. So there's a robustness about Americans, right, that Europe has lost. There's very few people. Like, you can't go shooting or hunting black bears in the Black Forest in Germany. Like, that is gone. I can go an hour well, not even an hour. I can go 30 minutes from here and get lost or eaten by a mountain lion, right? There's something very raw about the United States, and there's something that still gives people an edge. And like you said, if the equivalent of me driving from here to New York, I could go all the way through Europe, through about like 20 countries to get to where I am. It's a gigantic country. So I think that you need to be mindful of that, and mindful of why America is the way it is, why its laws are what they are, what the Second Amendment means. I think a lot of people, because of the recent turn of events, have all of a sudden understood what the Second Amendment is all about, So I think for me, it was incumbent on me, out of respect, to understand the country. And it just so happens that, when you start you start going into something and you kind of love it anyway. And then the deeper you go into it, the more and more you love it. It doesn't mean that that it's faultless or is perfect. But what it means is it is the best. It's a country that has continually tried to be the best of itself.
Well, that broad understanding too, I think, is something important, because as veterans who,
I've lost you.
We're still here.
Yeah, we're still here.
We'll work through it. So. Can you not hear us? We're still here.
Is that you or me? Here.
I think that's you.
It's me. No, hang on a minute. Let's try this.
Better.
Let's see. Can you hear us? We're talking.
For some reason. Oh no.
I'm gonna kick you out, and you come back in.
I'll call you back. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
See, now you could be an actor, because that was good mime work.
Look at my face.
All right, let's try it. I'll call you back. 1 second.
We'll fill some time here. One of the things I wanted to say to them too is, Federalist Papers, these papers, these documents that protect our freedoms and explain how they do it. Mm-hmm. If we don't spend time, and it's like, as a person who comes from a foreign land, you're forced to get into that literature and have someone explain it to you in the classroom. But like during the 4th of July, someone was saying, we don't celebrate the 4th of July because it doesn't equal our freedom. And I'm like, you understand, the 4th of July is about national freedom. We said, here are the offenses that Great Britain did, and you're not allowed to do that. And so we're declaring independence. It wasn't saying that there weren't slaves and there weren't this. They were saying that it was our national freedom we established. And when we don't spend time with this literature and understand what it is, it's easy to say something as false as it didn't ensure my freedom.
Again, it's the people with the most opinions are usually the least informed, and that's kind of a part of Americana. I don't even know if it's Americana. It's
it's a right to be,
Yeah, and again, even the uneducated and ignorant, I guess, have those protections under the Constitution, to speak what they want to say. And I think the real voices that need to get heard are those ones that are educated and that can be understanding and tolerant of a difference of opinions. And the question I was just asking him was, patriotism as a brand. Like, do you think people just wear it as a brand? Like, oh, I'm cool, I've got red, white, and blue T-shirt on, or I support this candidate, or is it something that should be a national requirement? And it's nothing you could really measure, because there's obviously certain levels, the number of flags you could hang in your house, or the type of apparel you wear, or does patriotism have to be something that's visible? There's a lot of people that don't wear it on their sleeve, but are still.
And why do we get mad? Like, if you're a patriot, and I have like my limit where I'm like, that's just too much, right? Like, I'm tired of hearing Lee Greenfield sing. It's probably, like, it's become.
I never get tired of that song.
But I will say that there are people that have 4, 5, 6 Christmas trees in their house. I know people that keep a Christmas tree up all year. People that love the fuck out of Disney and have Disney shit everywhere. Yeah. And it's okay to do that, but it's not apparently okay to love
that idolatry of certain things. If you're a patriot, idolator, idolatrous.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll have to look that one up. I make words up all the time, but there's a certain segment of the population that thinks that's bad, or you do get a little bit over the top. But I think it's like anything, like religion, when people are just forcing it down your throat, or politics, or patriotism, or podcasts, whatever. It could be anything that you love personally. I think that's important.
Podcasts are definitely that. There's nothing more douchey to say than, have you heard my podcast?
What's a podcast? That's what I love still to this day. I don't even know. It's like watercolor painting's been around for, I don't know, centuries. And they're like, what's a podcast? How long has this medium been around?
And no one runs around going, have you seen my watercolor picture I made the other day? It's a green dinosaur. You want to see it? You got to listen to it. You got to watch it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's neat to hear someone come from another place, because obviously Matthew he's British, but he lives here now. Yeah. His work is here. And just for the audience, in case you haven't looked him up yet, let me put his link on on the banner here. He made it already in England. Like, he was on, shows that have been around since the 60s. He was doing it, but he loved America so much, he came here. And you think about that, like how many times a day that happens, where someone's just like, I'm doing it here
in the 60s. I mean, I think you just made Matt a little older. You said you're on shows that have been around since the 60s, but you're only in your late 40s. So I didn't want to.
I'm 300 years old.
Yeah, he's like,
Charlemagne.
So, well, before we got cut off, mate, we were talking about patriotism, which I love talking about, and Pete and I often get the question, well, the protests in America, and how do you feel about that? You fought for 24 years. I love it. I always say, show me a great protest, and I'll show you a great democracy in action.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have that ability to say what we think, and whether it's educated or not, because again, normally the people with the most opinions are the least informed. That doesn't bother me, and I think to be able to hear both sides is important, and that's what really makes this country vastly different than the over 60, 70 countries I've traveled to that don't have that right, that constitutional right to say or do those things that may bother 50% of the population, but that's, the other 50% are entitled to do what they want to.
Yeah.
No, I think you're entirely right. And coming from the UK, I say to people all the time, I'm like, you don't have free speech. You don't. You think you do, but you don't, because you don't have a constitutionally mandated right to free speech. It's a tradition, right? So that means that can be infringed upon, right? So, but that's not the case here. And the amazing thing about America is non-citizens have a right to have free speech. So you can actually come here as a foreigner and have more rights here than you would have in your own country, which is really remarkable. And as you said to me, I'm like, I want to debate people. You shouldn't feel intimidated if you have got all the facts on your side. Why should you feel intimidated by someone saying something, as long as you can have an open dialogue with them? Because if you have the better ideas or the truth, right, what have you got to be afraid of? I mean, and it's plainly obvious when you go out and you see these demonstrations. If you have an active debate, then the best ideas come to the top, which is the way it should be, right? I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah. Any good idea should be able to survive some pretty serious fighting, if it's going to be
Yeah,
a good.
and often it hones it. Often
Mhm.
these things are honed down. You might say, "Oh well, I want this," and then someone's going to come back. And I mean, this happens all the time. And certainly, for example, with screenplays, when you're writing a screenplay, every single word that the writer puts down, this when you write a book,
Yep.
you think that is everything you put down is right. And I say this to actors all the time, is when you finally get a script, that script, the writer put that down for a reason. There's a word in there that's said for a reason. It's up to you to figure out what that
Mhm.
reason is. But we all have editors, right? So because you're so close to it, sometimes you
Yeah.
need someone else to come in and go, hey, you wrote this there, but it doesn't make any sense later on down, or for writing a book, you might say, because you fill in the blanks in your brain, right? Like, say if you're doing
Hmm.
something about a deployment, or
Mhm.
you'll talk about something, and you've unwittingly filled in those blanks that are not on the page. So I think that when you have a debate, it's good for you to be challenged. And
Yeah.
I always love, David Mamet said that there's a way that they debate in Judaism where you, and I think this is really important, is that you will say something to someone, like a proposition, and the person opposite you has to repeat it back to you, right, so they understand what you are saying. And the conversation can't go forward until you understand what the other person is asking of you, or the statement that he's saying.
Yep.
And I think that's super important, because so often people make statements and they think that they've made a clear statement to someone, and they haven't, or an idea is put out there and it hasn't quite, they haven't really thought about all the implications of what them, and you guys know, as veterans, which is so important. You might say, we're going to go on this mission. You've got to, cross-reference everything, think of every eventuality, because it's not someone having their latte spilled is the worst thing that's going to happen. You're talking about death, maim, so the stakes are raised. And I think that, as you said, freedom, which is what you guys fight for, is so important. And that's why I feel so, I don't say indebted, but that is to the military for fighting for those freedoms, because I think that they are the backbone of the democracy of this country.
I like the comparison of the editors and how they change things. Would you say editors are artists, or artists are separate from editors? Or is there an art in editing?
Do you know what? There is an art in editing. There is, but there's all, it's a two-way street, I think. I mean, if you're talking about editing of a film, like an actual editor of a
Mhm.
film, definitely there's an art to it, right? If you're talking about editing of scripts or books, it's a two-way street, because you have to have an editor that is impartial enough not to want to say, this is the way that I would have written this book. That what you need is someone to say, is the person that wrote this book fulfilling the objectives that he set out to fulfill? And that's kind of hard, because some people are egomaniacs and they want to go,
Mhm.
well, I wouldn't say it like that. Well, it's not your book. So, but what all I want from you is, have I achieved my objective? Am I getting across this correctly? And then, if the feedback comes back, it takes someone's lack of ego to take that on board. Because don't forget, as I said before, and you know this, when you write it because you think that it's all good. You don't
Yes.
submit it in going, well, most of it is, half of that is crap, and really I didn't do a good job on it. You put it out there. I mean, so what I do is, when I write screenplays, I'll write them and I just walk away from them. and then come back and read it again in like, I mean, I also send for notes, but I'll come back and I'll read them fresh. And then sometimes I'll go, whoa. I mean, it's always overwritten, right? You always overwrite. You always do too much. So that's the first thing, is to go through.
Although they're not doing the creating, the brainstorming, I think there's some art in it, but I view them as the right brains of the writer, you know, the mathematicians or the accountants, because they're keeping you accountable and they add so much to it. But there are times where I know, like I write something, say like, oh, well, they get over descriptive, and I said, no, I want the reader to figure that out on their own, and then ask the editor the right question, like, would you be able to figure that out? He goes, yeah, I could probably figure it out. I'm like, all right, well, let's not do that. And building those relationships in any industry, and we do it on the podcast, like what stays in the show, what goes out of the show. Sometimes the long pauses in the show, the dead air, actually add to the show, I think, in some cases. So I think that's interesting to get different opinions on what we do as writers in this space, because there's a lot of veterans that listen to the show that are always trying to break into this show. And we were talking about, you know, patriotism a lot and that understanding of cultures, but I liked how you dipped into the creative pool too, because that is what keeps the lights on for you, and you're vastly successful at it. And I think it's important to share that with some of the listeners too, because they love that.
Hey, I want to ask you, because we've been kind of locked, and I'm going to change gears and get away from the patriotism thing for a while, because I want to get back into your artistry. The lockdown, has that inspired the musician in you to do more things? Because we can't really make, you know, the union and everything else, and this is not negative to anything, but it's just not possible to reliably make something soup to nuts. So have you gotten back into the music, or what have you done to fill that creative space?
Not so much with the music. I've been writing. Yeah, so I actually wrote a script. I was like, because again, you know, I'll find a way. You know, when you grow up with no money, you know, you got to find a way, right? And you want to get somewhere, you got to find a way. So, and I'm always, I'm one of those people that are like, well, I don't expect anyone to come and give it to me, so I'm going to go and make it happen. So I wrote a screenplay. Actually, I was like, how can I get a movie done in COVID? Right, like, so how, especially with all the ridiculous like things I mean, how can you do social distancing with a makeup artist, right, when they've got to come in and they've got to like put eyeliner or whatever it might be on for the person. So I figured out, well, your diving suits, you know, if you're in a complete wetsuit. So, you know, so I wrote a screenplay about diving. And that's actually what I was referencing, you know, about going back and forth with, you know, writing something, then stepping away, and then letting it, you know, germinate a little bit, and then come back and look at it again. And I actually sent it off and got some notes on it initially. I was like, oh, these notes are ridiculous, you know. And then I read through and I'm like, actually, that note is a good note. So I've been more writing. And I think the other thing that and I say this to the people that are getting into writing for the first time, and I'm you know, I'm sure you guys will relate to it. Some people like Stephen King can sit down and just write. Other people need to go and get a cup of coffee. They need to walk around around the block. They need to just have it. My thing comes when I have a shower. I'll be in the shower and I'll be like, boom. It always comes to me. It's like Doc Brown. I think he was on the toilet, right? Right. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's because, you know, you just focused, but it doesn't always come. It's not something that you can always force. But you know, those building blocks of a book or a screenplay or whatever, they'll often come in when you're doing something else.
Right.
And that's why, by the way, I teach acting as well to a few people that really want to. I mean, just a select few that want to get into it. That's one of the reasons why when I have a technique where I'm learning lines, where I'm teaching them how to learn lines, I have them do something else. Right, I have them, you know, stay active physically doing something else, whether it's throwing a ball or whatever. Because if you can get that subconscious firing, then what you're doing is you're focusing, when you actually do the scene, you're focusing on the character rather than the words. And I think that goes back to the writing, where you know, you need that little subconscious to fly. And very often doing other things, physical things, will allow you to do that. If you guys have found that, right?
Yeah, there's a whole line of science on that. Like if you're going to go into a face-off in hockey, if you hum a song, just not thinking about a song, you just like do a tune that occupies part of your brain that will get in the way of your performance in that face-off. Like they've studied this whole, how do you get your brain to operate better? And it's not multitasking. It's just like assigning different parts of your brain to do different things, so that the other part that needs to focus and it's cleared out. It's, you know, it's an interesting way to approach these problems. When you talk about writing and doing, you know, how you do it, like someone like Stephen King, I think is he writes for a different purpose. He's a fountain and it won't stop, and he has to write it because he's got to get it out of his head because there's something else coming, and it's maddening. I would rather be you, where you build these building blocks and put the puzzle together slowly over time, because you can put 10 different puzzles together, you know, and you're not compelled to write as because it's an affliction. You're compelled to write because, you know, it's something that you are able to get better at. It's like a craft for you. And I'm not trying to put anything hard on Stephen King. He's great. He's fine. But I know like Sly Stone is the same way. He cannot turn the music off in his head. He has to get it out because it drives him crazy if he doesn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's certainly, those things can be as much of an affliction, right, as they can a benefit. You look and you say, well, you know, look at all the money he's made, look at the success he's had. But when it's, I always say this, like when you have a virtue that doesn't bother you, it's not really a virtue, right? So like if you don't have a wandering eye, then you don't sit there and go, well, I'm a real virtuous guy because I'll go women, right? Well, no, you just don't do it, right? So it's a virtue when it's an active choice, right, to do it, or so I think that, you know, being able to write and wanting to hone your craft, again, you know, you don't necessarily want to be a jack of all trades. But for me, I think there are certain things that are in a similar kind of skill set that you can, you know, kind of tap into. Some people can't, but some people can. And for me, like with the singing, it was purely that, like, how many more things can I do that'll maximize my chance of being able to feed myself?
Yes.
Right? Like if I can sing, then I can do musicals.
Yeah.
You know, if I can sing, then you know, if the acting doesn't work out, I can do the singing. If the singing doesn't work out, I'll do the acting. You know, if the acting doesn't work out, I'll do the writing. If the writing doesn't work out, I'll do that.
All
you
right.
know, it's kind of like a survival thing, but it's all in the wheelhouse of what I love doing.
Yeah.
So tomorrow you wake up. You can't write, you can't sing, you can't act. What is the one thing you do next?
Well, a lot of people would say that's true anyway.
Touche, Matthew.
Yes.
Do you know what? Honestly, there was a time, and this is the truth. There was a time where, you know, for whatever reason, I'd have my goals. You know, I'd say, okay, well, I really want to do this in life. I really want to do that in life. So for whatever reason I was never motivated by money. My entire career, it was never a motivator for me. But, you know, just getting a little bit serious for a second, you know, I'm a dad. I could go and work in Costco, dude. I could go and work. I have, all I want is to be a good dad and a good husband. And that's all I want to do. So if I have to go and sweep floors for a living, I've done it before. I can do it again. You know, I don't have that aching to, it's kind of like that thing. I was kind of explaining this the other day, is like, you know, that kind of grumpy old man thing where you get to an age where you're like, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care. I'll tell you this and I'll do that. And it's that kind of like letting go of the things that are that you feel matter. And then you get to an age where you go, it doesn't matter. So to me, those things,
right when he was making his point.
Yeah,
that's the best part.
So Matthew, you can
Sorry,
still
I'm back.
hear us.
Okay.
We're gonna,
Finish making that point if you can. We can't
Yeah.
see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is that gone? I'm having
We can hear you though,
technical
buddy.
issues. Here we go. I'm coming back.
That'll work.
I'm
That'll
coming
work.
back. No, if I the parameters have changed for me, because I think that a lot of people think that, oh, if I can just do this, then I'll be happy, or if I can just get there, then I'll be happy. And what happens ultimately is, and you see it all the time, you're like, why did that massive rock star commit suicide? You know, he's worth millions of dollars. He's, you know, is this or that, or, you know, why did that? The truth is it really is, for me anyway, it is understanding what truly matters. What truly matters.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, your kids, your wife, your family, your friends, and are you doing a good job with them? Like, are you doing, and for me, like, I joke with my friends, right? Because my dad was never around, right? So I joke with my friends, my bar is really low when it comes to my kids, right? I'm like, for my kids, I'm like, hey, I'm here. Right? So to me, that's a win, right? And then it's going across and saying, okay, how do I become a better person? How do I become a better father? How do I, and again, a lot of that has to do with imparting the information, the correct information to my children about the way of the world, about what this country is all about history, which is constantly being rewritten in the media, and to tell them, and what's really difficult in this day and age, and certainly in Los Angeles and California, is telling my kids, listen, you got to stand up for what is right.
Yeah.
Right? You have to stand up, and not go with the flow. You know, when it's right to do that. And I use you guys as examples all the time. I'm like, I'm not asking you to go and take a bullet in Ramadi. I'm just asking you to stand up in Los Angeles and say, no, that's wrong. And I'm going to be, I'm going to stick true to what I believe is correct. And I think that's super important. So the answer is to be a good dad, and a good dad and a good husband. I think that is really central, and it is
That's a tough job.
Yeah.
It
That's
is,
way
especially
tougher,
right
way
now.
tougher than acting and writing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. You hung out with us for an hour, and it'd be great to do another one of these, since we're all local, because I'm in Orange County and Scott's down in Temecula, so it's not hard.
Oh, you are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you would be in Orange County, wouldn't you? Yeah, I know that. In fact, I might be going down to Newport Beach.
10 minutes from my house.
All right. I may well be there next week. So.
All right. Well, let's do it. But yeah, so thanks for coming. Everybody should go check out MatthewMarsden.com for all of his projects. There are a lot of them. I wanted to also say one thing real quick. My girlfriend's uncle was dear friends with Michael Caine. So we have almost a connection.
Yeah, no, he's and by the way, he's an incredible human being, very humble. He's a classic example of that old kind of like, I'm gonna work hard. He's done over 100 movies. He's a great dude. So I was very fortunate to do my first movie with him. So
yeah, it's incredible. That was Shiner, right? Shiner, yeah. All right, everybody go check out Shiner to see Michael Caine and Matthew Marsden do what they do. Hey man, thanks so much. I'm going to push this button and we're going to stop here in a second.